Hey homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm. Thanks for joining me in my kitchen. Today we are making 30-minute Thai beef stir fry, and I am making it as a salad. I love this recipe. It's super simple. It uses a ton of fresh garden ingredients. It comes together really fast, and it is really delicious. The main ingredient, aside from obviously the beef, is basil. And normally a Thai recipe would call for Thai basil, but Thai basil, one, the leaves are really small, and secondly, it bolts super fast, like even faster than regular basil. And Thai basil has a bit of an anise flavor to it, and I'm not a lover of anise flavored things. So I don't really love tarragon, I don't really love fennel, I avoid things that have caraway or fennel seed in them, so I actually make my Italian sausage without fennel, which is, I know, anathema to everything. But yeah, not a huge fan of licorice flavored things. And this recipe didn't call for Thai basil. This recipe calls for regular basil. The other thing about Thai basil is it's not something most people have growing in their garden unless they've specifically planted it. You don't often see it on a seedling shelf when you're buying seedlings in the spring unless you're seeking it out. And so I love the fact that this recipe uses regular basil instead of Thai basil, and it uses a lot of it. And if you're like me, you plant basil, you love the idea of it, you love the aroma, it smells amazing, and then mostly what you do is you make pesto. And we all love pesto, but you can only use so much pesto. And so it's really nice to have a recipe that uses a lot of basil for something besides pesto. Basically, this recipe treats the basil as if it were a vegetable rather than something that you would just lightly sprinkle on. So really great way to use up a lot of basil from your garden. If you've ever grown basil, you know you need to keep it picked or it goes to seed very quickly. And so you need to constantly, about every 2 or 3 days, be picking off the tips so that it stays bushy and that it doesn't go to seed. And so this is a fabulous recipe for that because it uses a lot of basil. And yeah, this is definitely going to be in a regular summer rotation. It's a really, really delicious recipe. Let's get started.
So after all that talk about Thai basil, I did end up putting a little bit of Thai basil into this recipe. You can see here how much smaller the leaves are than typical basil. And then a whole bunch of regular basil. The recipe calls for a total of 2 cups, so that's a good amount of basil. I find it's much easier to just pick leaves off this way than it is any other method that I've tried. Give everything a good rinse. Get it in a colander and set it aside so it's draining and not super wet. And then as a topping on this, I'm doing a quick pickle. These are Persian cucumbers, so they're really tender and lovely, and they were going bad in my fridge, and so I needed to use them up. My cucumbers have not quite come on yet. We're still a couple of weeks out probably. And so I'm just chunking these up into a dice. And then I don't really follow a recipe for this because I've done it so frequently. You want to add a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt. I'm adding just a touch of sesame seed oil and then rice wine vinegar. And then I'm adding just a splash of chili paste because I thought it would be good in this recipe. Give everything a quick stir. My hands are nice and clean. And then just set that aside, and in 15 minutes, they'll be perfect. These are Hungarian black peppers. They look very similar to a jalapeno, not super hot. And I did taste one of these. And so one of the things I end up adding to this recipe while I'm cooking it is a little bit more of that chili paste because these really weren't hot. If you want your chilies to not be super hot, cutting out the seeds and the veins on the inside will reduce the heat drastically because that's where most of the heat is. And then this recipe calls for, rather than diced, just slivers or thin slices. And so I set about half of this aside to go on the top, and then I'm putting half of it into a skillet, along with 5 cloves of garlic. And I had a fresh head of garlic from the garden that I was too lazy to peel all of the small little bits on, and so I'm struggling a little bit here to get this through the garlic press. You can see how small those are. So I didn't want to peel each individual one, and I thought, I'll just muscle through. And then I had a really hard time getting the press to go through. but a good dose of garlic. It's so nice to have fresh garlic again. And then the recipe, I think, originally called for 1.5 pounds of ground beef. These happen to be 1 pound packs, so that's what I'm using. So somewhere in that range is fine. So give everything a stir until you smell that garlic, so about 30 seconds. And then get your beef in there and mush it up so that you've got a lot of surface area. And then I'm really trying to get some good browning on this meat. And so basically I'm spreading it out and then I'm leaving it alone for a couple of minutes. So I'm trying to get a good sear with some actual color on that side that's down rather than constantly fiddling with it. Good solid pinch of salt. This is kosher salt here. And then some fresh ground black pepper. And then I'm gonna need a 1/2 cup of chicken broth or chicken stock. I have a lot of chicken stock on hand, but when it's just a small amount like that, I usually just use the better than bouillon because I don't want to open a can of chicken stock and then have to figure out what to do with the leftovers. The recipe called for scallions. I happen to have a spring onion, and so I'm using the spring onion. I'm using the top like it's a scallion, so I'm going to use the top as a fresh topping at the end. And then I'm actually dicing up the small little head here. This is a Walla Walla sweet onion. I happen to live in Walla Walla. And so these are a specialty product that you get early in the season, and they are just sweet and lovely. The recipe did not call for onions in the mix with the meat, but I went ahead and threw it in there. So I'm kind of riffing a little bit. And you can see I am getting a little bit of color, which is what I was looking for. And normally I would put the onions in right when I put the beef in, but because these are sweet onions, they're not going to have a lot of heat. There's the chili paste I mentioned, about a tablespoon of that. And so if these onions end up being slightly underdone, it's not going to hurt anything, or they're not going to be hot to the taste. My husband was telling me about his day. Here's our basil. Basil is a little fiddly to chop because the leaves are so thin that it's hard to get good purchase with the knife. And so it helps if you roll it up so that you've got a little bit of mass there. And so that initial run through, I kind of rolled the leaves up and then I'm just whacking it here. And I probably could have put these in whole, but I wanted them to be broken up a little bit. And then there's going to be a sauce that goes on this, so I need 3 tablespoons of fresh lime juice. And all Thai cooking is a mix, if you get it right, of sour, salty, and sweet. And you'll see that as we make this sauce. So some soy sauce. And then some fish sauce. Don't be afraid of fish sauce. It really freaked me out when I first started cooking. It just sounded so weird. And it's just a delicious umami bomb, and it does not make things taste fishy. And then some brown sugar. So we've got our salty, our sweet, and our acid. Things are looking pretty well done at this point. You want to ultimately saute everything for 8 to 10 minutes. So we're adding in our basil and our chicken stock. And we're treating this basil as if it were fresh spinach. So it's basically being treated as a vegetable. We're just going to stir this couple cups of basil until it wilts, which is not going to take very long, just a minute or so. And then we're going to add in our sauce. Make sure that that sugar is dissolved and not just stuck on the bottom of your container. Give that one more stir. And then add in our fresh ingredients. So our sliced up scallion type onions and then some of those fresh chilies. And then just because I had these in the fridge and needed to use them as well, as a side, I'm doing some snow peas. And these were absolutely delicious. I always forget how much I love snow peas when they're cooked. A little bit of sesame there, a little bit of oil in the bottom of the pan, a little bit of salt. And then I have ginger juice, so it's just basically a way to add a little bit of ginger without any chunks, and I'm snacking on them as I go. This was one of my last heads of butterhead lettuce, and it had been in the fridge for a week, and unfortunately it got a little bit frosted on one side because of where it was sitting in the cooler. But I'm just breaking that up. I love butterhead. This is my favorite lettuce. It's so good. I'm sad that we are past lettuce season. It's just too hot in July around here to grow lettuce. And originally I was going to do lettuce cups, and so like lettuce wraps, and then I realized I didn't have a whole lot of big leaves and some of them were frosted, so I was like, oh, I'm just going to make it into a salad. So topping our beautiful lettuce with our very tasty beef mixture. Little side of peas that were going everywhere. And then a handful of our beautiful crunchy quick pickles. So good. And then I happen to have an Asian dressing homemade in the fridge. This is based on kind of the classic ginger dressings that you get in sushi places. Pretty easy to make. You can Google a recipe, but you can also just buy one at the store. So there you have it. Really quick, comes together fast, super light, beautiful summer eating. I love this dish. I will definitely make it again. Give it a try, you guys. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share. I have new content coming out every week.